Okay, so welcome to HOMT 611 Events Management. This is our 5th session. And in today's session, we will be looking at site planning and management. As usual, there are certain learning outcomes we hope to achieve, and today they are threefold. The first one is to be able to determine the desired geographic location, type of facility, spatial factors, and operational logistics for different sites that we choose to organize events at. And then we will also be able to develop site selection criteria, as well as conduct site inspections and evaluate potential sites using the criteria that we are going to learn for achieving these purposes. And then finally, you'll be able to select the site that best caters to the needs of all involving stakeholders of the event. Because as we have learned in the previous sessions, stakeholders play a key role in event planning and execution. So in selecting the site for the event, we need to consider the needs and requirements of each of the stakeholders to ensure that we choose a location that is the best fit for all the people concerned. So these are the learning outcomes for today's session. Based on that, we are starting our lecture from site planning. So what is site planning? Site planning is basically the art of arranging structures and shaping the event space, right? So here it's all about choosing the right site for your event, which is one of the critical stages in site planning, because site planning is not just about choosing the site for the event. Before you even get to choosing the site for the event, you need to be able to determine what criteria will help you to judge which site is a good enough option before you even end up with a choice. Because using the criteria based on the event you are trying to plan and organize, you can be able to come up with a number of site options which you can evaluate using these criteria, and then ultimately select the right one that meets majority, if not all, of the criteria that you have stipulated to make it the preferred choice for hosting your event. Now, it offers attendees the best experiences physically and a pleasant event atmosphere if you are able to appropriately plan and execute the site selection process. Because a large part of event organizing and hosting is in the environment or the site and the ambience of the site in which the event is organized. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, though.
So you have to make sure that you choose the right site that has the right characteristics and factors that will come together to communicate the vision or the theme of your event and give the attendees at your event a most pleasant experience once the event is executed. So still on site planning, there are various elements that we must consider when selecting and planning for the most suitable site for an event. And these are threefold, including site specifications, site identification and selection, and then site layout design. Now we'll take each of these one after the other and we'll break them down, starting from site specifications. Now, like I said, with site specifications, it is all about selecting an event site based on a certain number of identifiable criteria. Now, these criteria that you will come up with will usually be done in consultation with other stakeholders, considering the various needs that they have in terms of planning and executing the event in question, such as planners, sponsors, event attendees, as well as the various service providers that you will be using to provide different services to ensure the successful execution of your event. So when you have considered all the needs of your stakeholders, there is the need for you as the event professional to review and identify the specific resources that are available, as well as the requirements that each of these stakeholders have given to be able to help you come about creating a list of site options that will help you achieve the objectives for the event in question as identified by the needs of all the stakeholders involved. And these include, one, your budget, 2, the profile and image of the events that you are organizing. 3, the facilities that are required. 4, licensing and permits. 5, the expected attendance to this particular event. 6, site flexibility. And 7, accessibility. And we are going to take each of these and we will break them down and try to understand what they each entail, starting from budget. Now, we all know what budgeting is, right? It is the process of financial estimation by which event professionals such as yourselves know how much they have to spend and then try to plan on how they are going to allocate this amount that they have to spend. And in the event that the objective is to plan and execute a commercial event, an extended element of the budget will be how to be able to allocate the resources effectively to ensure that they are able to generate enough revenue out of the events that they are organizing. So depending on the nature and the purpose of the events that you are organizing, you may or may not have profit as part of your motive. So for instance, if you are organizing a wedding, for instance, would there be a profit motive? If you were organizing a wedding as an event professional, would there be a profit motive to consider as part of budgeting?
No.
Good.
No. Once you don't want profits, it's like
Good.
funeral or I think it's only funeral and then maybe fundraising, something.
Ordering.
Outdooring as well, good, right?
Yeah.
It's not about making a profit. It's about being able to execute an acceptable event within the limited budgets that you have, right?
Yes.
Good. But regardless of whether or not there's a profit motive, definitely you will have some expenses because you have to spend money to plan and organize the event, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. So budgeting is important because it helps you to be able to know the resources that you have and be able to plan on how to spend within the means of the resources that you have. So budgeting helps you to analyze the financial resources you have. And in terms of site planning and allocation and selection, identify the type of sites that can best accommodate the budget that you have and what you want to do within that budget in terms of executing the event in question, right? So budgeting is very important in this regard. Now, apart from the budget, you also need to think about the profile and image of the event, right? Because events can be classified in different ways when we are considering the profile and image. For instance, in terms of profile, an event can be defined or characterized based on its size. So usually most high-profile events involve large numbers of people, like the 5,000 strong funeral that Harriet and her team organized. That can be classified as a high-profile event, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is.
You can also classify an event based on the venue. For instance, if we are classifying an event that is being held at the State House and comparing it to an event that is being held at Unique Floral Event Center, which one is more high profile?
State House.
State House.
Right? Again, you can target and characterize the profile of an event based on the kind of attendees that you are expecting. So for instance, if you're having an event that the president of Ghana is attending versus an event that your manager is attending, which one is more high profile?
The president.
The president of Ghana, right? Good. So these are all ways by which you categorize and classify events based on profile. And you can use a similar criterion to classify events based on image. For instance, using the kind of attendees, you can be able to classify particular events in terms of the kind of image that the event is projecting or their theme. For instance, if we have the president of Ghana attending a particular event, the image or theme of the event will be that of a high-profile national event, isn't it?
Yes, yes,
Good,
yes.
because the first man of the land will be there.
Yeah.
It cannot compare to an office party where the image of the event is more of a localized image based on the organizational culture and how the employees who will be attending the event will see their participation in it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. So in terms of size, we can classify events based on whether they are small, medium, large, or mega. Now, the more number of people are involved, the more high profile the event becomes. So for instance, when we talk about a mega event like the Olympic Games that involves more than 1,000 people, we can classify it as a high profile event. Versus an office party that involves fewer than, say, we can even say fewer than 50 people, depending on the organization you are considering. We can call it a low profile event. Good. So the image or theme of the event, in addition to the profile of the event, are key determinants of the site that you select to host the event at. So for instance, if you are doing an office party, however, it involves more than 1,000 people in that you are bringing all the employees from all the different branches of the company in the different parts of Ghana together. It will automatically shoot the event from a small event to a what?
A large
event or a mega event.
Mega.
And that would determine the kind of location that you choose. Because if it was less than 200 people or less than 50 people, you could have easily had it on the office grounds, isn't it? Or in the company conference room.
Conference room.
But when it becomes a mega event or a large event, you now have to start thinking of venues like the stadium or Accra International Conference Center, given the sheer number of people that you are expecting.
Independence Square.
Or the Independence Square, where you can have enough space to accommodate all these people.
Yes.
And perhaps depending on the budget that you have, will not cost you an arm and a leg. So profile and image of the event is also very important when it comes to site selection, right? We can also talk about facilities. For instance, when we talk about facilities, they may include, if you are choosing a hotel, the number of meeting rooms in the hotel, the banquet halls, the restaurants. If it is a convention center, you are looking at whether they have conference halls. Do they have on-site catering? Do they have audio systems or PA systems, as they call them? Do they have adequate washrooms? A lot of people select event sites without thinking about washrooms. And then last minute, they go and order these funny looking plastic porta potties and come and put them outside. Some of the people too do not consider the profile of the event and make it commensurate to the facilities that they should book in terms of the sites that they choose to organize the event at. So you can't organize a high profile event that the president of Ghana is coming and ministers of state are coming and you go and rent porta potty. True or false?
Oh, you can't. True.
Yes. So the budget and the profile and image of the event will determine to a large extent the facilities at the sites that you choose.
Yeah.
So as an event professional, you have to be able to check the size of the site in terms of whether it will be able to host the profile and image of events that you are trying to organize, while closely referring back to the budgets that you have to make sure that in checking the size and the capacity, as well as the facilities that are there, your budget can help you accommodate
Madam,
the choice of a particular site. Yes, Kasim?
I'm thinking that even you might like to consider safety and security, in the sense that if a place is known to be a hotspot of crime, you might not like to hold the event, even though the facilities there might qualify.
Good. So you can't choose a site that does not have on-site security personnel.
There might be. Yes.
Very good, Kasim. Right?
Yeah.
So the facilities could include an on-site security guard.
Yes, madam.
Right? Now, for events of an international nature where you are expecting people to come from outside the country, or even perhaps it's a national event, but you're expecting people to come from out of town, you need to think about accommodation facilities as well, isn't it? Because if you are choosing a venue for convenience purposes, you would want to choose a venue that could also provide accommodation so that the people will be able to attend the event right in the comfort of where they are staying. Or if it is a bit further away from where they are staying, you would want to be able to organize some kind of transportation. And you realize that a lot of the hotels do this very well. They have shuttle services that can convey passengers from the airport to their hotel, provided the particular passenger in question is being accommodated at the hotel. And the same shuttle will sometimes take them around on a daily basis and help them run their errands. So in this case, if you're organizing an event and perhaps the event venue is a few meters or miles away from where you are accommodating your guests, you need to be able to make sure that perhaps the facility offers transportation services to get them safely to and from the site of the event. Right? So that is it for facilities. Apart from facilities, we can also talk about licensing and permits. Now, this is very popular in other parts of the world, where to organize any kind of event. And more recently in Ghana, most of the time, they insist that if you're organizing an event that would constitute some kind of public nuisance, you need to be able to get a permit from the police to give you permission to organize the event. And those will involve them giving you sometimes some kind of escort. Please, are we aware of this?
Yes.
Good. All right, so if you want to organize a health walk, for instance.
Madam, your screen is gone.
Yes, I'm working on it. I'm going to get it back in a few moments.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's sorted now. Can we see it now? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Right. So you will need a permit. And in other parts of the world, for even events that are being held indoors that will not constitute any kind of social nuisance, there are certain permits that as an event professional, you need to be obtain to successfully host the event. For instance, abroad, when you're organizing an event indoors, you will need a fire permit to be able to ensure that the venue is safe enough to be able to host that number of people. And there is no risk of a fire outbreak. Please, am I making sense?
Yes, Doc.
Sometimes you will also need an alcohol permit, because there are certain venues that you need a permit to be able to drink alcohol there.
Hey, this one here.
You didn't know? Okay.
I don't know, because it's like Ghana people drink alcohol the way they want.
Anywhere, everywhere. Good. Even abroad, people who sell alcohol need a liquor license.
Wow.
To sell alcohol.
Madam, but not in Ghana.
No, not in Ghana. In Ghana, they drink anywhere. Anywhere, everywhere.
Wow.
Right? So as an event professional, if you were organizing an event in such a place, you need to ask yourself, okay, do I have to get a permit before we can serve alcohol on this premises? Is this premises deemed safe by the fire service to host the number of people that we are trying to bring in?
Okay.
There's no risk of fire outbreak. You need a license to for all these things, because while the event is going on, the police can pop in at any time. And if you do not have the required licenses, the police have the right to shut down the event. So as an event professional, before you select a particular site, you need to ask yourself all these questions and see if you have been able to satisfy all the requirements in terms of obtaining the relevant licenses and permits to host your event at this particular site. In Ghana here, most of the venues that are available for organizing such events have already obtained these licenses. So when you select them, you as the event professional do not have to worry yourself to individually go and obtain these permits and licenses. The venue already has the permit or license. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Good. So for instance, if it is a hotel and you're using their banquet room, the hotels would have done their fire safety certification. So they have a certificate from the fire service that says that, okay, the place is safe enough to organize events and there's no fire hazard. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
So licensing and permits are very important. Even though we downplay it a lot in our context, in other parts of the world, it's a very serious thing. Also, we need to consider expected attendance, which is very important. There have been instances where I have attended events and I have seen the venue or the site of the event overflowing. Such that the number of people that they preferred for was less than the number of people that showed up. So now they are having to find chairs and tables to sit people sometimes outside the premises. If it's an indoor event, you will find that they are setting up tables and chairs for people to sit outside. Sometimes so you go to events and you see that they're having it in this big banquet hall, but the people are only occupying some small corner of the room.
Spacious.
That one too is not good. Because it makes the place hollow.
Okay.
And it's very difficult to create a good ambience in such a location because the place is so big and you have just few people. So you realize that you either group the people together in one small corner or you sit them very far apart from each other to try and fill up the room, which will make the attendees feel very detached from each other. So you don't want a venue that is too small, that it cannot accommodate all the people that you are expecting. And you also don't want a venue that is too big, that even if all the people that you're expecting come, the room will still be half full. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Good. Now, in considering expected attendance, you also need to think about the features of the people who are attending. You know that event attendees come in all shapes and sizes.
Yes.
So we have people who will come with various disabilities. People who may be in wheelchairs, people who may be blind. You will also have people who have other issues that need for the event professional to pay particular attention to. Like, for instance, the example I was mentioning the other day with regard to people who have specific food allergies. You need to think about all these people in selecting a site, because if you select a site that does not have the ability to prepare varieties of food, to take into consideration the different kinds of attendees who will be present, including those who have allergies, you may have problems as an event professional. Also, in terms of disabilities, if you choose a site that does not consider the disabled, for instance, they do not have ramps for those who will be coming in on wheelchairs to climb over, or they do not have rails that people who are coming in that are blind can use to walk, and you're expecting this caliber of attendees at your event, you'll be in trouble as an event professional, isn't it?
Yes.
So beforehand, you need to have an idea of the kind of attendees that you are expecting, who they are, what their features and characteristics are, to help you in your selection of a site to ensure that you are choosing a site that can cater to their unique individual needs, so that they will all have a good experience when they attend your event, right? So these are the 5 main dimensions in terms of site specification, including the 6th dimension, which is what? Site flexibility. Now you bear with me that when you select a site, because of the nature of event planning, nothing is set in stone. Things can change as and when, including even on the day of the event while the event is being executed. You agree?
Yes.
Good. So you need to be able to choose a site that is flexible enough to give you the opportunity to make changes where necessary. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
So for instance, if during the event, all of a sudden, you did not know that perhaps somebody with a seafood allergy was going to attend the event, but then all of a sudden, someone like that attends, and perhaps the whole menu is made up of seafood. The event site should be flexible enough, if they are the ones doing the catering, to give you the opportunity or the chance to get another meal for this person in question, so that they will also be able to have a good experience at the event. Sometimes when it comes to event organizing, in terms of the setup of the event venue, sometimes you realize that you have set up the room in a particular way to accommodate a certain number of people. However, you realize that at some point, the number of people that are coming are more than the people that you anticipated. However, there's enough space to seat them. But for some event sites, they may not allow you to change the setup that they have done. They will not even be willing to bring in additional chairs and tables, even if you want to pay for it. So under site flexibility, all we are saying is that the site or the venue should be able to consider different changes that have to be made in real time, sometimes on the day of the event or prior to the day of the event, to help you to be able to make accommodation for changes that will come up that were not anticipated in the beginning. Please, I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, madam.
Sometimes some event sites will not even give you contingency options, particularly when it's an outdoor event and something happens and there's the need for you to perhaps move into an indoor space that is already available on the premises. Some event professionals have had sites denying them access. Because for some of them, the excuse is you did not pay to use the indoor space, you paid for the outdoor space. So whether it's raining or it's doing what, we are not opening the indoor space for you. But the ideal thing is for an event space to be flexible enough such that in case there's an unforeseen event like rain, this event space is flexible enough to work with the event professional as part of the contingency plan to make the indoor location accessible so that people can get out of the rain. Wouldn't that be a fair arrangement?
It will.
Yes. So site flexibility is very important because you can never tell what will happen during the event, and you will need to make a change at the site to accommodate whatever has new development has come up. And without having a cooperative site that is flexible enough to facilitate your action, it will be very difficult for you as the event professional to do your job right. So site flexibility is important. Accessibility to the site is also important. You need to choose a site that a lot of your attendees, right, or majority of your attendees can access from their point of origin. So you have to be able to check with the manager of the venue regarding access to the location during business and non-business hours by various means of transportation. Because you realize that for your attendees, not everybody will have their own private car, isn't it?
Okay.
Some people may come by public transportation.
Yes.
And with public transportation, depending on the kind of event you're organizing, some people may come using trotro, some may come using taxi, some may come using ride-hailing services like Uber.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to think about accessibility of the location. If someone was coming there perhaps by Uber, what's the best way to get there? What address should they enter into the app to bring them straight to the destination? If they're coming via trotro, you need to consider the various locations that your attendees will be coming from and looking at the kinds of trotro they must pick from each location to get them safely to the venue of the event. Please, am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
Good. So you need to obtain all this information and share it with your attendees or clients or whichever group of people you are dealing with in terms of organizing the event. So that in case they are an attendee coming by trotro from a particular location, they know the combination of trotro to pick to bring them to the venue of the event. In case they are coming via Uber, they need to be able to know the exact address to put in the Uber document, to the Uber app, sorry, to get them to the venue of the event. You as the event professional also need to think about the accessibility to the venue of the various trucks and trailers that will be delivering items for the event. Because in case the rental company you are using is in town, and you go and get a venue or site that is on the outskirts of town, it will have implications for your transportation, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, some rental companies can even say that it's too far, our car cannot go there. So we cannot rent the items to you, go and look for another company. And in case this a rental company has all the items that you are looking for, which will be difficult to find with another rental company, it will be hard for you if they decide that the location is not one that they can be able to drive their vehicle to. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So accessibility is also very important. So with accessibility, we've come to the end of our discussion on site specification, right? Where we talked about looking at factors including accessibility, site flexibility, expected attendance, licensing and permits, facilities, profile and image, as well as budget, to help us to be able to specify the exact criteria we are looking for in the possible event venue that we are going to select to stage the event in question. So once we are able to determine the specifications, the next step is about identifying the particular sites that possess these specifications that we are talking about. And that brings us to the discussion on site identification. So here we are looking at doing research regarding the criteria that we have come up with from the specification stage to be able to come up with a list of potential sites that possess these characteristics that we are looking for in the ideal event venue where we want to stage the events that we have been commissioned to organize. So once we are able to do our research and find possible locations that fit this bill, we need to be able to independently go and visit each of these locations to see if they possess each of these characteristics that fit our needs and what we are looking for the particular events that we are trying to organize, right? So depending on the kind of event we are organizing, like we identified in the specification stage, the criteria that we are looking for in each event site will be different. So we need to come up with a comprehensive list of criteria that has been vetted and approved by all the stakeholders, with which we are going to proceed and identify this list of potential venues that we will ultimately use as the basis for selecting the final venue to organize our event at. So in terms of site identification, there are certain criteria that we have to use, or certain stages we have to go through at the site identification stage to lead us into developing the list of possible options and then ultimately selecting a site for our event. Now, these include, first of all, developing the site selection criteria. Second, conducting site inspections. Third, evaluating the potential sites. And then finally, selecting our favorite out of the lot as the preferred site. Now, we'll take each of these one by one, starting from developing site selection criteria. Now, these criteria will include everything from the size of the event, which we have talked about, including the number of people that are involved, and then the suitability of the sites to be able to host this number of people, considering the budget that we have and the profile and image of the event, along with the licenses and permits, the flexibility, accessibility, among the other things that we discussed at the specification stage. We also need to think about location of the site, as well as its availability, because a site may be at a very good location and be very suitable, but then it may not be available at the time that we want to host the event. We also need to think about the facilities that the site has, as well as the cost implications if we were to go with a particular site, right? So once you are able to do this, you will have a certain criteria based on the size of your event, what will make a site suitable, its location, its availability, its facilities, as well as how much it will cost you to obtain such a site, with which you will carry into conducting the site inspections. So when you go to do a site inspection, you are evaluating the site using these criteria that you have developed, depending on the type of event you are organizing and what your objectives are. So under conducting site inspections, it is all about the event professional taking the list of criteria that they have and going to each of the event sites that they identified through their research to be able to check the viability of each of these sites using the criteria that they have developed to see which one of them best meets those criteria, right? So site inspection is exactly what it is. You have to physically go to each of the sites, sometimes with one or two members of the project team or the event planning team, to look at the sites and verify everything for yourself physically. Now, to do this successfully, you need to go to the site with a site inspection checklist. Now, this checklist will usually contain the criteria that you developed in the previous stage, by which you will be judging each of the sites. So as you visit the sites and you look around, you check off your checklist, or you tick on your checklist which of the criteria that the sites met and which of the criteria that they did not meet. And by the end of the site inspection, you will have a checklist for each of the sites that you visited, and you'll be able to determine which of them best meets the criteria that you are looking for, based on how well they scored on your checklist that you created. So after conducting the site inspection, you take the checklist that you have created and the scores you gave each of the sites on your checklist to be able to evaluate the potential of each of the sites. So here, what most event professionals will do is that they will assign weights or marks to each of the checklist items to be able to ensure that once the site inspection is complete, they will tally the scores for each of the checklist items that were ticked for each of the sites they visited and see which site scored the highest. So the sites with the highest marks in terms of the checklist items ends up becoming the most preferred, all the way down to the least preferred site, which would have met less of the criteria indicated on the checklist. So in evaluating the site potentials, we do that strictly by the criteria that was observed during the site inspection. And once you have been able to evaluate, you can go ahead and determine which one did the best and select your most preferred out of the list, using that as your primary basis. So there are various ways in which you can present your site checklist. For instance, this is a very basic and simple checklist that an event professional was using to select a venue for a conference, right? Now, they were using just 4 criteria. The first one being accommodation and the number of people that each hotel can accommodate, right? And they were doing this based on hotels located in specific cities in the United States. So they have New York, Orlando, Chicago, Washington, DC, and Las Vegas as all cities that are potential locations for the conference. And they were judging them based on accommodation. So under accommodation, they were looking at how many people could be accommodated in each city. And then they were looking at international airports. Since they were expecting international attendees, they wanted to see which of the cities had an international airport to make it easy for international attendees to get to and from the event. Then they also wanted to look at accessibility from different countries. Again, to look at how easy it was for attendees from different countries to access the city. And then carbon footprint, which has to do with how the operations of the hotel contributes to the deterioration of the environment. So based on these criteria, they assigned a score to each of the cities, ranging from 1 to 5. 1 being the least affordable, 5 being the most affordable. So here they were looking at affordability generally. So in terms of accommodation, which city was the most affordable using the grading scale that has been provided? In terms of accommodation, which city was judged the most affordable?
Doc, is it highest to lowest or is that what?
Look at the note at the bottom. It says 1 is the least affordable and 5 is the most affordable. So in terms of accommodation, which city was judged as the one with the most affordable accommodation?
Is it Las Vegas?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
Because they have a score of what? 5.
5.
In terms of the international airports, it seems they all have equal marks.
They scored per.
Good. In terms of accessibility from different countries, all of them except Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And then for the carbon footprint as well, again, all of them except Chicago, isn't it?
Yeah.
So of the 5 cities, based on the total marks they each earned, using the different criteria, which city emerged as the best? Post the conference.
Las Vegas.
Good, right? Because they had the highest score. So this is one way by which you could do the site inspection and evaluation to be able to determine the preferred site using the totals that each site earned after the inspection based on the criteria that you were judging them on, right? Now let's look at another one. This one is a more detailed checklist for a site. And you can see that they are checking a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And this time they are not assigning marks, but they are just ticking. So you can see that they are ticking on different items, including what? Venue availability. Then the venue rental fee, you see that?
Yes.
Then the venue fee deposit policy. Then additional fees. Then early access policy, because sometimes Some event organizers will need early access to be able to scope out the venue and then prepare in terms of how to set up the venue for the event. And in terms of policy, some sites do not allow early access to the venue. They will usually give you access to the venue perhaps a few days to the event. But some event professionals may need access longer than, some event venues may need access longer than the few days to the event. They may need it perhaps a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, right? So these are all criteria that are on this particular checklist. And they were developed based on the needs of the event professional in question and what they would like to see being provided by each venue. You can also see that they have included in the checklist the capacity of the different areas, right? So they need 3 different areas to host their events, and it has to have capacity enough to host all the attendees that they are planning on bringing. Please, can we see that?
Yes, Doc.
They are also checking whether the venue has an entrance area, a reception area, additional events at the venue concurrently, being they want to make sure that on the day of their events, there are no other additional events being held. So if there are additional events being held, they'll check this box. They also want to check if signage is provided by the venue. They also want to check if there are signage opportunities. In the event that signage is not offered by the venue, do they have the opportunity to bring their own signage to set up, right? Then they also look at curb appeal and directions for guests, how easy it is for them to be able to direct guests to the venue. Then we can also talk about parking fees. Some venues, particularly in other parts of the world like the United States, will usually charge attendees to events for parking. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to park at the premises, they'll charge you. You have to pay because they are paying for security and valet to park the cars and make sure that they are safe and secure until the event is over. So they'll charge a parking fee. Some event professionals will also want to look at parking capacity. We have attended events where the parking capacity, of the venue was not large enough. So you find out that people fill up the whole parking at the event venue and then they now have to come out and park along the main road. Have you seen that before?
Yeah.
One particular venue that is always hyped that has that problem big time is the Underbridge at East Legon. They do not have a proper parking facility, but it is a preferred location for a lot of high profile events.
Mm.
We can also talk about, like I mentioned earlier, an item that is often factored into the parking fee, which is the valet parking. And then the parking location. Sometimes you are paying the parking fee because the parking location is not owned by the site that the event is being organized. It's an independent location where they have been able to arrange to get you, the event attendees, to be able to park your vehicles at. All right. Then you may also need to focus, to factor into your planning, whether or not you will need to rent a bus or whether or not you will need to get a bus to go and pick up everybody and then drop them off after the event. You see a lot of this happening during the crusades. Before COVID, when they do crusade, you usually provide buses that will go around and pick people up and bring them to the crusade grounds. And then they have buses that when you close, you can join and then it will drive past your destination and then you can get down there.
Yes, smoke park.
Good. Right. You also need to consider criteria according to this checklist that have to do with the deliveries and the shipments. Some event venues will be able to provide you the opportunity to have some of the products and services that you need for the events delivered to the venue prior to the event. So for instance, the event venue can allow you to bring your drinks even 3 days or 1 week to the event. for them to keep for you. And then a day or two before the event, they'll refrigerate it to ensure that by the day of the event, it is properly chilled. Right? And then we can also talk about audio visuals, which are very important. You need to be able to have a good PA system that in case you bring a DJ, he can play good music and then the sound will be properly heard by all the attendees in the venue. These days in Ghana, a lot of the events have to do with the setup of various lighting and props at the event venue. So you need to be able to ensure that there's equipment that can enable the lighting company to set up all these fancy lights and props that will help to be able to beef up or create an ambience in the event venue, right? So on this checklist, you can see that there are quite a number of items. So depending on what the event professional is looking for and what their priority is out of all these individual criteria, we'll be able to judge whether a particular site is good enough or not for the organizing of the event. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Good. Right, so this is another example of a particular checklist, which is more detailed than the one we saw before. Now, this is another type of checklist. Now, this is just a portion of it, right? It's a more extensive list, but we are just looking at a piece of it. That gives us an idea of another way in which the event professional can design their checklist. And here you can see they go into even more detail than the checklist we just saw, isn't it?
Yes.
In the previous checklist, parking was just one item. They either have it or they don't, right? But here they break it down into different things that they want to see. And they ask a question, and this could either be a yes or a no or a not applicable. I don't know what the colors here mean, but at least I know the YNNA means yes, no, and not applicable. So for instance, in terms of parking, they are trying to find out if there is appropriate lighting in the car park. This is important, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Because like Kasim said, if it is an evening event,
yes,
good. You need the lighting for people's safety. They also want to see if the car park surface level has no potholes or slippery gravel. This is also important, isn't it? But they don't want to damage people's cars.
Yeah.
Also, they're asking, is the car park in close proximity to the venue? That's also a valid question. Because if somebody has to park their car and walk, I've heard people complain about these things before. They go to events and where they have to park their car, it's like several meters away from the event venue. And for us, the females who like to wear these heels to events, imagine having to walk all the way in heels. By the time you get there, your feet will be in pain. You'll be walking like, you'll be walking like an Apache. I've gone to events, I've seen women remove their shoes and walk barefooted before because they couldn't take it anymore. Right, so this is a very valid question in terms of parking. Now look at the other one. It has to do with stairways, ramps, corridors, and storage access. So they're asking the ramps in the place, especially for the disabled, do they have non-slip surfaces? Because you know the ramps are smooth and curved, isn't it? So if it is not non-slip, somebody can slip with their wheelchair and fall on it.
Yeah.
Then they're also asking, is the stair treading in good condition? I've been to places where the staircase is made out of wood. And when you're walking on it, the noises that you hear, it's almost like with the next step you take, the staircase is about to collapse. So they want to find out if the stair treading is in good condition because people will be walking on it back and forth and you don't want to have any unfortunate accidents. Likewise, asking if the stairway is kept clear and it's not used for storage. Also, are the handrails in good condition in case someone with a disability wants to walk up the stairs, or someone that is blind wants to use the stairs, is the handrails that they will use, right? Among other things. So you realize that depending on your level of expertise and experience as an event professional, the criteria that you will be looking for may differ from another event professional. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yes, based on what we have just discussed. So you as an event professional need to decide the criteria that you are looking for and how it will help you successfully execute your event, to be able to know how to design your checklist. So once you have your checklist and you have been able to get the various criteria and you have thoroughly inspected and assessed each of the sites, you can now go ahead and select your preferred site. So here, it is not just about the sites that meet all your criteria. It is also about the sites that gives you the best value for the criteria that you have satisfied and the service that you will be getting. So for instance, a site may meet all your criteria, but it may be too expensive for you to afford. Is that possible?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So sometimes you may not get the best deal, but you may have to compromise in certain regards. Sometimes to us, an event professional, it's about being able to negotiate. So in the outset, you may not be able to afford the event venue in question that you have seen is your preferred one that meets all your criteria. But through negotiating, you can be able to get the venue amidst some compromises on your part and the part of the event venue owners. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So we can decide that we are going to have our end of year branch at Taiba. And Taiba can tell us that, well, if you are taking over the restaurant for the day, you have to pay for meals equivalent to the sales you would have made on a normal day if you were not taking over the event. Now, perhaps the amount involved may be beyond us. But if we can negotiate and say, okay, don't close the whole restaurant for us, perhaps just give us a small part of your outdoor venue to organize our event, and then you can open like on a normal day and still do your business alongside. That's a negotiation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And they can either accept or reject it, depending on how they feel about it. So as an event professional, what I want you to appreciate is the fact that negotiation is a key part of your job, especially when it comes to negotiating deals that will help you to be able to get the best offer within the limited budget that you have. Please, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
And more importantly, when you are able to do these negotiations, make sure to put the final decision into written form, in the form of a what? If you are putting the terms of an agreement together in written form, what is it called? We talked about this in our previous session. What is it called? If you all agree on something and you put it on paper.
Is it a project charter?
No, you people have agreed. Contract.
Okay.
Contract.
Yeah.
Because it's a negotiation. Perhaps in the negotiation, the other party did not have good negotiation skills, so they felt cheated. If you do not put it into writing and let them sign and make it binding, you can come the next day and they will say they never agreed to such a thing. And that it's outrageous. And because you do not have any documentation to prove, you would have lost and wasted all your negotiation tactics. So once the negotiation is done, make sure everything is put into writing and all key aspects of the discussion are included, including the attrition clauses, including whoever backs out of the contract first, what the consequences will be. If there is a postponement, what the consequences will be. and exactly the responsibilities of each and every person or signatory to the contract as stipulated in the contract. That way, once you select the final site, you know that you are secured. And there is no way that somebody can come and say that I never agreed to this, because everything would have been in writing and the signatures of all the people involved would have been appended. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Awesome. So once you are able to select the site, you now need to think about the layout of the site. Hence our next discussion on site layout design. So site layout design is all about how you lay out the various structures and fixtures and equipment in the venue to be able to create the kind of atmosphere and ambience that would lead to the execution of a successful event. Now, when you are laying out a venue, there are certain important considerations you need to make. For instance, the routes for emergency services, including emergency vehicles, and easy ways of exiting the venue, assuming it's an indoor event. You also need to think about the positioning of power supplies, especially in the event that you are using alternate sources of power supply like generators that involve using fuel and different cables. You also need to think about the topography of your site, which will determine how you position the different elements at the venue. So if it is a flat surface and there is no high and low portions of the venue, if you're having an event and you need a high table, it is either you create a kind of podium, which we will place a table on and call the high table, or design a corner of the venue, which will look different from the other corners of the venue to depict the high table being different from the rest of the tables in the venue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
These are all aspects of layout. So you must carefully design and plan the layout of your event venue, which makes it very important for event professionals to visit and do site inspections in person, because that is the starting point of you being able to conceptualize and visualize the layout of the venue and how your entire vision is going to be executed. And in doing so, you need to be able to consider how the layout is going to contribute to the enjoyment of your attendees at the event, their comfort, as well as their ability to engage with all the different activities that will be taking place at the venue during the day. So if you have arranged the tables such that they are so close and tightly packed together, such that even for somebody to get up and go to the washroom, they have to struggle and squeeze and go through a lot of people and do, excuse me, please move your table, I need to go and pee. It will be a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to make people uncomfortable. If you have a layout where it is very difficult for people to locate the exits, when people want to leave the room, they'll go around in circles a lot looking for exits, which will not make the event very enjoyable for them. Sometimes too, you attend events and then the directional signs to the washrooms are not clearly indicated. So you have to go around and be asking people, where's the washroom? Where's the washroom? Where's the washroom? If you are not lucky, before the person gets there, they would have, excuse me to say, peed on themselves. Because they spent a lot of the time just trying to locate the venue. Or in this case, where the washroom is at the venue. So when designing the layout of your venue for an event, you need to be able to review all the different elements that will come together to contribute to a successful event, taking into consideration the facilities that are available and the location of each of these facilities, along with the scale of the event, to ensure that the layout is properly designed to facilitate the best kind of experience for the event attendees. So in terms of site layout design, there are certain dimensions we need to consider, including the space, the structures, the utilities, parking, communication, safety and first aid, which is Kasim's favorite, the legal requirements, and then signage, right? So let's look at each of these one after the other, starting from space. So when we talk about space, we are looking at the total required area for both indoor and outdoor functions, and the activities that will make stakeholders engaged in the event. So in setting out the layout in the space, looking at how big or small the space is, you need to consider how your attendees will be able to interact actively, smoothly, and pleasantly. Like I said, if an attendee to be able to move to another table to talk to somebody has to squeeze through different chairs and tables, and sometimes they will have certain body parts rubbing on other people, it will definitely not be a smooth or pleasant experience, will it?
No.
Good. So you need to look at the space and how to be able to comfortably seat your attendees or comfortably arrange your attendees along with the structures that have to be present there for the event to be a success. And then share this with the event venue owner to be able to ensure that they execute your vision the way you have planned it, to ensure that your attendees are comfortable to be able to interact with each other in a pleasant and smooth manner. In terms of site layout design, you also need to think about the structures. Depending on the scale of the event, you can have both temporary structures and permanent structures. So for instance, in the event spaces that are offered for rental these days, you see that it is a huge space, which is very bare and plain, making it possible to set up different temporary structures to accommodate the style and nature of your events. Have you realized that?
Yes.
Good. With very few permanent structures, like perhaps washroom facilities, a kitchen, and then an indoor space for those who prefer to have their events indoors. So in terms of temporary structures, we can talk about the flooring to cover vegetation. Some people will not like to see the green grass as part of their event, so they will cover the whole place, sometimes with these monogram, is it plastic? Usually in events, right? They have these plastic covers with the monogram of the couple that they put on the floor. Have you seen that thing before? They usually do it when they set up the dance floor at weddings. Have you seen one before?
Yes, but this is Harriet. I've seen one. They usually write the names like
Good.
S and F, and
Good.
then that's where they will dance on.
Good. Those are temporary structures that
Yes.
they usually set up to be like the dance floor for the event.
Yes.
And then as part of the temporary structures too, depending on who the event professional is and what the specifications of the event commissioner is, whether it is a couple for a wedding or a funeral, will bring in their own kinds of chairs and tables.
Mm-hmm.
They will also like to bring in their own decor and lighting. These are all temporary structures that can be brought in and taken out. So you need to plan the arrangement and positioning of each of these structures to ensure that the event is executed without a hitch. And these must be done in consideration with the permanent structures, because you know that permanent structures most of the time cannot be moved around.
No.
So if there's a big pillar in the middle of the room, you cannot move it. You need to plan your layout and build it around the pillar, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. So these are all important things we need to consider when it comes to the structures at the event venue. We also, in terms of the space and the structures, you can be able to use floor plans to depict how you are going to utilize the space and the positioning of each structure. And you remember I talked about the fact that there is software that helps you to do all these things. And in our next lecture, I will teach you the various software, including one particular software that helps you to be able to draw these floor plans. Is that okay?
Okay, Doc.
Good. So this is a typical example of an event floor plan that is showing the different structures and how they will be placed in the space. So you can see that they have different numbers tables for all the vendors who will be selling in yellow. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then the blue tables represent the food stations where the food will be. Then the yellow circles with the camera represents the photo station. So if you want to take a picture, these are the places that they'll be positioned. Do you see that?
Yes.
Good. And then there'll be a spotlight dressmaking section, right? So you can see that there's a key to tell you where you are likely to find each and everything that you will be looking for, right? Including the washrooms. Do you see where the washrooms are?
Yes.
Good. So if you're organizing an event and you put this layout at the entrance, anybody who perchance comes to the event and gets lost can look at this floor plan and have a sense of where everything is positioned so that you don't get lost, isn't it?
Yes.
And whoever the venue setup manager is will be able to know where to position each of the items to ensure the smooth execution of your vision. So this is a typical example of a floor plan, which is very necessary for every event professional to maximize the use of their space and ensure that it is optimized to make the events they are organizing smooth and enjoyable for each of the attendees who will be participating. This is another example of a floor plan. This one looks a bit different, isn't it? Good. So you see that depending on the software you are using and how you are drawing it, you can be able to use different specifications and different icons and items to depict the structure and setup of the space. So you can see that this big rectangle in the middle of the room represents what? The dance floor.
The dance floor.
So this is a floor plan for somebody's birthday party.
Okay.
And you can see that this place is the bar, isn't it? Good. Then there's another bar. So there's a lolly bar and then the actual bar. So the actual bar perhaps is where the alcohol will be. And the lolly bar, maybe it's a different kind of bar. I've never heard of a lolly bar before. Well, then they have the exits. Do you see? Very clearly marked exits.
Yes.
Then the washrooms. Do you see where the washrooms are? Good. Yes. Then they have photo booths. Then they have the high table. The high table is here, right? At the head of the dance floor.
Yes.
Which is the sound desk. So they've written sound desk there. I don't know if you can see it, but so it means that this is where the DJ will be situated. And then these little things you see are lighting. So these lighting will be set up to light up the room and create some kind of ambience. And then you can see that these are what? Sofas, you see.
Okay.
And then these are tables with chairs around them. And you can see that each table has 4 dots, representing how many chairs?
4 chairs.
4 chairs. So there's a total of how many circles with 4 dots? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So 28 times 4 is what?
Kasim,
28 times 4 is what?
Kasim.
Oh, why did I mention his name?
Kasim, 28 times 4 is what?
112.
112. So that means they're expecting around 112 people.
Okay.
And you can see that because they are using the site plan, they've been able to properly space out all the tables. Do you see?
Yes.
Good. To ensure that everybody is comfortably seated. And they've been able to position all the items such that there is free flow of movement. You see that? Anybody who wants to get up and move around is free to move. And the dance floor is also big enough for anybody who wants to dance.
Yeah. But what is that deep dots? Deep dots.
The black dot.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. They don't have a key.
Okay.
You see, the other one had a key.
Yes.
Where they tell you this is for retail, this is for food, but this one didn't have a key. So if you are not the one who drew it, it will be very difficult for you to interpret.
Then it can be placed at like the entrance, because if guests are entering and then we have this deep black dot, I don't even know what it is.
Good. So perhaps this one is for the personal use of the event professional.
Okay.
And using it to explain to the setup people how to set up the room. But like you're saying, they can't put it at the entrance to guide the attendees.
Yes.
But if they are putting it there just to show the attendees where the exit is and where the washroom is, mission accomplished. Because at least the attendees can find the bar, the photo booth, the exit, and the washrooms. So they can still use it for some things. They can't interpret everything, but the necessary things they need to interpret to at least make their experience at the event a memorable one, they can find those. So that is it. This is also another kind of floor plan. This one is for, I think, an exhibition. And the space is more cluttered. Can you see that?
Yes.
Good. So there's a lot more going on, and you can see a lot of permanent structures in the place. Do you see? All these things are permanent structures. So they are using not just one venue, one room in the venue, but it's like a huge venue with different buildings and different rooms that they are using. Good. And usually exhibitions are like that. You can see that if you've been to an exhibition before, you see that there are so many exhibitors and so many things happening at the same time.
Yes.
Good. So this is a typical example of an event floor plan for an exhibition, where you can see they have different rooms for workshops and breakout sessions. And then they have the secretariat, where they will have meetings, where they have the cloakroom. The cloakroom is not relevant to people in our context because we don't wear coats. But for those in colder climates, when you enter a venue or a closed area, you need to take off your cloak because it will be warm. So you need a room to keep them. Right? But this is another typical example of an event floor plan. This time it has to do with a venue for an exhibition. So as you can see, depending on your purposes and the kind of event space that you have, your floor plan can look very different. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why it's important to be able to know how to draw the floor plan, so that depending on the event you are organizing, you can immediately design a different floor plan to accommodate the venue that you have selected and how you want to design the layout and the positioning of the different structures in that particular venue for that particular event. And this is also another event floor plan. This time it's for a convention center where they are having a convention / conference. And you can see that the design of this one too is a bit different, isn't it? Good.
And easy.
It's easy. So it goes back to what I said. And this one has a key, you see? So where you see the blue is the bathrooms. The light green is the elevators. The dark green is where the staff quarters is. So if you are looking for staff, this is where you go and find them. And you realize that there are washrooms all over the place. There's one in the storage room. There's one next to the loading dock. And then there's another one next to the kitchen, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Then the conference rooms are the orange. So conference room 1, conference room 3. I'm sure there's another conference room, which is not shown here. Then the storage room, there's only one storage room. Then they have where you take the trash, which is here. Then they have one big stage. So it goes back to what I was talking about. There are different ways or approaches to developing the floor plan, depending on the venue that you have, the layout that you want to design for that venue, and then the level of detail and complexity that you want to put into your floor plan. Because so far with the different floor plans we've seen varying levels of complexity, isn't it?
Yeah.
None of them is the same. This one is different. This one is different. This one is different. This one is different. Right? So as an event professional, you need to be cognizant of how the venue that you have selected can dictate the layout and structure of your event, and how the floor plan will make it easier for you to communicate your vision, not just to the people who are helping you set up, or the venue or site managers who are going to coordinate the activities on the day at the venue, but it will also help you with your attendees to help them to locate important things that they need to find with regards to the venue and having the best experience at your event. So moving on from space and structure, we can also talk about utilities and parking. Now, in terms of utilities, we are referring to the basic utilities that we all know of in terms of power, water, sewage, and then broadband. Broadband is currently a utility because everywhere people go to, they carry their smartphones and devices. I've seen people checking their emails at wedding receptions before. I've seen people checking their mail at funerals before. So in terms of utilities, you as an event professional, you need to consider how people are going to make use of or benefit from each of these utilities to determine the success of your event. So you can't have a venue where the sewage is not proper, such that people who use the washroom cannot flush. This is very common even on a daily basis when you visit people's offices and business premises. Sometimes you find out that perhaps there's no water supply and they have not made alternate arrangements. So the whole place has some kind of, excuse me to say, stench. This will definitely affect the experience of guests at an event, wouldn't it? And that's my number one problem with the plastic porta potties that they have been using for the outdoor events. Has anyone been to one when it is almost full before?
For me, no, I've not even entered one before. I will.
Because you're scared.
I get home.
Exactly. It's very difficult to keep those things hygienic because they don't have running water. And there's no sewage to take the waste away once it's being produced. It is kept in there. So in planning events and selecting a site, your design and layout must factor in the provision of these utilities. And currently there's a new potty service in Ghana called Posh Potty. Has anyone heard of Posh Potty before?
No, I have not.
Oh, Posh Potty is the upgraded, modern, classy version of the porta potty that we know. So they are a company that provides potty services, but their potty is like the, how do I put it? It's like the normal water closets that we have in the washrooms, right? But they bring it in the form of like a trailer. So it runs like a normal washroom. There's running water. The washroom is always clean. You can wash your hands. You can wash your hands. Yes. You can wash your hands. You can flush. And because it's a luxurious version, they have attendants who are always on call. Right? Let me show you a picture of it very quickly. So you can follow them. They are on Facebook and Instagram. They are called Posh Potty. Can you see the screen?
Yes, dog. Okay.
Good. So this is what it looks like. So it has running water and everything. And when you enter, it's like a normal washroom. And there's always an attendant who is like available to clean up after use. And it's neat. And some of them are air conditioned too. Yes. Unlike the other potties.
So it's a truck.
Yes, it's a truck. But it can be set up. It's like an RV. You know RVs, mobile homes. You know the RVs, the mobile homes?
Yes.
Good. They are set up with everything. Bathroom, bedroom, washroom, everything, kitchen. So that's how it functions. And it's very neat. And the best option to the porta potty that stays in the sun and gets hot with all that mess in there, and they expect people to go in and use it. So utilities are important. And like I said, broadband and internet service is a must for every event these days. So you need to make sure that the site that you choose either has Wi-Fi, or you bring a router there to provide Wi-Fi for people to be able to browse. But event professionals in Ghana don't really pay much attention to that, because people usually have data on their phones. And technically, it's not the responsibility of the event professional to provide data and broadband for event attendees to browse, unless it is requested for by the one who commissioned the event. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
All right.
So,
next, we can talk about, yes,
Madam,
Kasi. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know whether Jifa who should answer this question. So is it business-wise to install, internet infrastructure in your restaurant?
Yes.
Where your customers can, browse and all that. Is it business-wise?
Yes,
this
it
is not a hotel, or just a restaurant.
Oh,
yes,
this
it
one I
is.
can even
Yes, it
You
is.
have to.
Because currently, as it is now, if you look at the trend, that will also help you getting a lot of customers.
Good.
Because I have people coming in for meetings. So assuming they run out of data, they'll have to try and get it.
Good.
But once I have that there, you can somehow factor it into the pricing.
Good.
Or sell it out and people will buy it.
Good.
Because normally when we have the tourists coming around, the first thing they
Good.
look around them, do you have Wi-Fi? Let me say no. So sometimes they let us help them get data, or they get it themselves.
Yeah.
I asked this question because I am also equally trying to put up one facility, a restaurant. So I am trying to pass on the cost to the customer indirectly. Let's say what the food that the person will buy, maybe 50 pesos or 1 cedi on top of. Indirectly, the person will not know that he's paying for it, but of course the internet will be made available to him, but indirectly he would have paid for it. So that's why I'm asking this question. And from a practitioner's perspective, I think it's fine.
Yeah. And you realize that that's the model of a lot of these small coffee shops that are springing up everywhere, particularly in East Legon and all these other locations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you too, Jifa.
Thank you too, Prof.
All right. So in terms of parking, we can also talk about the parking space. Like I said, you cannot have an event in a particular location and then have your parking several meters away, knowing that definitely there will be attendees who will be wearing heels. So you need to think about parking. And if parking is not going to be available on the premises, you have to let your attendees know in advance, so that they'll be able to arrange what means will be best suited for them to be able to get to and from the venue for the event. In other parts of the world, they organize everything from valet parking to self-parking for events, depending on the preferences of the event organizers or the event commissioners and the attendees. So you realize that at some events, self-parking and valet parking are both available. So you as the attendee will choose which one best suits your needs, and then you go with that one. But in our part of the world, valet parking is not common, because I don't think anybody will go to an event and just trust somebody with their car and just hand over their car key just like that and go and sit in an event comfortably without thinking about what is happening to their car in their absence. So in Ghana here, self-parking is very common, right? So event professionals must put this as a key consideration in their site layout plan to determine where parking is going to be, considering the capacity and size of the event and the number of attendees that they are expecting. Next, we can talk about communication, right? The event venue must have a means of communication or facilitate communication. There are certain venues in Ghana here that as soon as you get there, your cell phone coverage will be very poor. You will not get reception. The business school rooftop is one of them. When you are there, I mean the business school main building on campus, the rooftop is one of the worst places for cell phone coverage. So if you are there, your communication is not always smooth when you receive phone calls or make phone calls. A similar thing applies to certain locations and venues. For some reason, sometimes cell phone coverage there is very poor. And sometimes, depending on how remote the location is, you will not be able to have access to certain means of communication. Sometimes, depending on the design of the place, if you're an event professional that uses all these walkie-talkies and small communication devices to communicate with your team members during the event, if there's a lot of electrical interference, you may not be able to use your walkie-talkies or communication devices during the event. So event professionals must always test their communication devices before the event to be able to see whether there will be any interference when it comes to communication on the part of attendees or on the part of the project team and how they communicate during the event. If this is appropriately done, the event professional will be able to ensure that all communication devices work during the event. And if certain communication devices do not work, however, they still want to use the venue, they'll be able to inform attendees in advance to enable them make alternative options. All right, and that is with communication. Then we can talk about safety and first aid, which is very dear to Kasim's heart. The safety and first aid of all the people who attend an event are the responsibility of the event professional. So you need to make sure that everyone that attends your event, once they get to the venue, is safe and kept safe until they leave to their various destinations. So to ensure the safety of these attendees, as an event professional, you need to be able to guarantee their security by hiring adequate security personnel and having a designated area where security concerns can be reported. You also need to make provision for first aid and any emergencies that may crop up. So you realize that some events may have an ambulance on standby, depending on the nature of the event, in case there's an emergency. And then for first aid purposes, they will either have a doctor or a nurse on call throughout the event, should some unforeseen medical emergency occur. Some events will also create signage that displays the local contact numbers for hospitals and the police in the event of any unforeseen occurrence. For instance, some events sometimes have violence breaking out. And depending on who is in a position to do so, that person should be able to call the police at least to come and restore order. And at that point in time, the event professional may not be in a position to make that call. So the contact information of all these agencies must be made available so that whoever is in a position to make such a call has the relevant information to make those calls. In extreme cases, for huge events like mega events, including the Olympic Games, power utility companies are also asked to be present in case there's some kind of power shortage or interruption in power supply, which may affect the smooth execution of the event. So Harriet, in 2008, was ECG on call?
No, I wasn't at ECG.
Oh, okay. Oh. But generally, if it is an event like the 2008, or the Olympic Games, the power utility company will be available or they will be on standby. to ensure that there's no interruption in power supply.
Yes, we have a plan for that.
Madam, in one of the matches, the lights went off.
Oh, Ghana.
I said, be careful.
It was Bafo. Bafo is the one who said it's not Kasim. Oh, Ghana. Harriet, you see, we can't insult your people, but this is a
no, that was then. It's been a long time. Now we have test bands and then we have lifeline buses. So this time is going to be different. We have upgraded everything.
Bafo, are you satisfied by Harriet's explanation?
I'll take a word.
You take a word there. We don't have a choice. But this is some of the things we are talking about, right? The event organizers should have had at the back of their minds that power outage can occur. So ECG should be on standby in case something goes wrong so that they can fix it. But look, here's the case they didn't. And power went off during the match. I'm sure someone was about to say, go, then the thing went off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it for safety and first aid, right? And then we can also talk about legal requirements. Like I said, depending on the law in the country or the state or the location that you're organizing the event, there are certain rules you have to follow. And these rules should be factored into the layout and plan of the event. So for instance, as an event professional, you need to know each of the legal requirements regarding the venue you are hosting the event. Like I told you earlier, in the US, there are certain venues that do not have alcohol licenses. So if you want to serve alcohol at that venue, you need to go and obtain an alcohol license before you can serve attendees at your event alcohol. Whereas some event venues automatically have their own alcohol license. So you can offer your attendees alcohol at the premises, right? Among other things, including permits from the fire service, permits from the police, depending on the kind of events that you are organizing. In certain parts of the world too, there are certain rules regarding hiring and using part-time staff and full-time staff during an event. Some event venues will not allow you to bring in staff from outside of their institution. All the waiters and waitresses and servers that you use must come from their institution. However, as an event professional, you will not know this until you actually take time to study the requirements of each of these venues, as well as the legal requirements required by government or state law for operating events at these specific venues and locations. And then finally, we can talk about signage, right? Signage is a good communication tool. Remember, we talked about the fact that the floor plan can be mounted as part of the signage to guide attendees to locate certain amenities during the event. Didn't we say that?
Yes.
Good. So signage is a good communication tool. Sometimes it helps to welcome attendees. These days at weddings, before you enter the reception, there's usually a big sign with the picture of the bride and groom telling you welcome to the wedding reception of so and so, right? Or this way to the reception. Some of them too are directional signs. And we see a lot of this while we are driving around town, usually over the weekends. You will see signboards in the shape of arrows directing people to specific places, be it a wedding reception or a funeral. So you see the signboard will be there at a vantage point and you say this way to the wedding of so and so. And as you go along, you see more of the signage guiding you closer and closer to the destination till you reach where you are going. The same can be done when you are having an event in an enclosed location. You can use different easels and sign holders as well as banners to communicate various kinds of information that will make attendees connected with the event as well as with each other. So you realize that a typical example of this is when during weddings, they create sign holders that depict where each person is supposed to sit. In Ghana here, it's not very common, but abroad it is very, very important to them. Because sometimes they orchestrate the seating such that they want to put certain people close together so that they'll have certain conversations that will lead to certain things. So sometimes you see that they'll put the seating arrangement such that they'll put all the single people on one table because they want them to be able to mingle and get to know each other in case it possibly leads to something else in future. Right?
Madam, what have you?
It's something that a lot of people do, especially for weddings, because they want their friends to share in their joy. So if they have some single friends who are attending the wedding, they'll put all of them on the same table to see if they can ignite a spark to make something happen, right? However, it's up to the event professional and the one who commissioned the event to decide what form of signage to use, where to place the signage, right? And then how much to spend on each of the signage, because you realize that some of these signs are very professionally done. And depending on how professional the sign is done, it could cost a lot of money. So these are conversations that need to be had between the event professional and the one who commissioned the event to determine exactly how much they want to spend on each of these signage for the particular event, right? And with that, we come to the end of today's session.